All right, so I've told you we have different systems. So they all have their strengths and weaknesses. Why don't we just use a simple, standard system of naming pathotypes all around the world? Surely we could just agree and have one system. Well, there are historical and biological reasons why we haven't done that. The main reasons include, and this is probably one of the really important ones, right? Geographic differences in virulence frequency. So in the US, in the North American system, they use a differential for SR9D. I've never seen a virulence for SR9D in Australia. Everything we've got is virulent. SR9D is not in any Australian wheat variety. So it's not a differential for me. It's not going to differentiate my isolates, and it's not an important resistance gene in Australian wheat breeding.
It tells you nothing.
It tells you nothing. Now, there is a weakness in that argument, right? There is a weakness in that argument because we occasionally get incursions of foreign isolates of rust into Australia, and there's nothing to say that tomorrow we might not get a stem rust isolate from somewhere else in the world that is actually avirulent on SR9D. Then it would become an important differential for us. But in the past 80 or 90 years, it hasn't done anything for us. It hasn't told us anything. Relevance of differential genotypes to deployed resistance genes. So I've mentioned to you before, the pathology has to be connected with the breeding, and that all has to be interconnected with what's going on in a farmer's field. So if a variety is released with a resistance gene, that gene, a genotype with that gene should go in our differential set. We need to monitor virulence on that. So if we end up with a new pathotype that's virulent on that gene, we can tell the farmers, we can say, this variety has now become resistant. I have actually been able to say that at least once. This variety has now become susceptible, all right? So a good example of that is SR26. That's in my differential set. A lot of people don't use it. But for us, it's a really important gene. We're the only ones in the world who have released a wheat variety with SR26. And in fact, we've got nearly 30 of them we've released since 1971, when a variety called Eagle was released. Right, so this is a really important gene for our farmers. Of course, it's in our differential set. It's not important at the moment in North America or in South Africa, so they tend not to use it. Genetic background on differential genotypes. Several Australian cultivars differentials also carry SR7B. So in some parts of the world, SR7B is not the important gene in the differential. There's another gene, but it's there. For us, that's not a problem because everything's virulent on SR7B. But if you go to some other part of the world where they have avirulence for SR7B, that makes our differentials of less value.
We have some low on markers.
On 7B, yep. We had some many years ago, but we haven't seen them for a long time. So those background genes can also limit the value. I mean, if you know the genes and you know the low infection types, it's not a fatal thing. You can actually work with differentials, and a lot of them do have more than one gene, but it doesn't help. And really, the bottom point says it all. So without an agreed set of differentials, we can't have a single nomenclature system. I can't use the North American system unless I use all of the North American differentials. You can't just say, well, there's 20 of them, I'm only going to use 10, and I'm going to call it T question mark, K question mark, S. You've got to use all of them. And not only do you have to use the same genes, but we have to use the same differentials. So unless we can agree on a common set of differential genotypes, we're never going to have a common nomenclature system. All right, so they're just some of the reasons that have limited let's say, the global adoption of a single system for pathotype nomenclature. I'm not going to bother with that. That's the stripe rust thing. Prasha, did you want to say some comments on the Indian system, just to give a brief outline on that?
Okay. I'll have to use your slides there.
Yeah. I don't have, this is the stripe rust one, so I don't have one for India, I'm sorry.
I'll try this. That would help.
You can use, it's a similar principle, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You want the pointer?